everybody, and welcome back to this episode of My Zero Carb Life. I'm Kelly Hogan, and I have here all longtime veteran carnivores that have been friends of mine for at least a decade. We go way back, and I am so excited to have each of you here today. Thanks for joining me, you guys. What I really did on the day the first time I knew carnivore was a thing was I went on Google and I just typed in, is it safe to only eat meat? And the very first thing I saw was a link that said zeroing in on health. And there was a picture of the thinking man and a steak. And I was like, okay. So I clicked it. And up came all of these journals. Charles, you were running the group. If you had to guess, back in 2009 was when I came. And I know by then the site had been there for maybe 2 years. But how many journals do you think there probably were back in 2009?
Oh, God, I have no idea. That was a lot.
Like, how many members? Any clue? I've guessed maybe 200.
Well, I don't know. I mean, in the early days, we went pretty high. I think we got up to, gosh, I don't know, 700, 800, 900. And then we culled people who weren't participating. And then we went down to like this 200, 300 number. But we had a huge number, but we just didn't know any of them. So we deleted half of them.
Yeah. So the group has moved from a forum to the Facebooks, zeroing in on health, same name, but it's really different because now there's not just a couple of hundred tight friends with journals. Now it's 31,000 of your closest friends that you don't actually know. And it's hard. Now we still see each other there answering questions. And on Zero Carb Health, that's Dana's group. And we're hoping Dana will pop in. She was there with us in the very beginning before I was there too with Charles. So don't y'all miss that old forum?
Yes.
I wish I could go back and read my journal because I think I would be amazed at probably to read some of the desperation as I would type of how sick I came into that group and how things quickly changed for me for the better, just life-changing things in a really quick amount of time.
I remember being really focused on weight in the beginning. In fact, I copied somebody else's idea of every day posting how much weight I lost. And, obviously very quickly that became it was still important to me. It was really important to me, but it became shadowed by the other health improvements. So I thought that was probably interesting to see that transformation of focus.
When the forum was closing, I think it was back in 2015, it was right before you started your blog, actually. Yeah. And so we heard that the forum was closing. I thought how disappointing it would be for everyone to be losing all their journals. And your journal was so amazing. So I just went through and I saved every page of your journal and I emailed it to you. Yeah. So anyway, so that's saved somewhere.
And Dana did some stuff like that. So yeah, there are some that are available for sure.
Y'all know there are a lot of people who sincerely, when they hear, carnivore since 2009, they're like, that's total bull. There's no way. Somebody said smartphones weren't even invented back then. That was the quote. And it was like, well, we didn't do it on smartphones. We had giant boxy computers. Yeah. And we just sat all day, every day about eating meat.
Yeah. Were all you guys on the forum when I arbitrarily cyber adopted you all?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So
remember me asking your mom, Charles?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you mind sharing your age, Terry?
I'm 78 and a half.
78 and a half. So Terry kind of adopted a lot of us as the cyber mom zeroing in on health. And, we were all there as friends helping each other out, but she was sort of our mother figure of meat.
And I think I've gotten a cyber whooping every now and then too.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever you guys got arguing and sassy, I would wash your mouth out with soap and send you to bed with no dinner.
Yes, and we definitely had arguments. I mean, you're not going to have a couple of hundred people, even if you agree on one big topic, which is meat is good for you. We all agree meat is good for you. But I'm going to ask some questions today that we may not even all agree on now, right? But through the years, it has taken some debate, you know, we were partly figuring this out. It's not like I was certain I had anything figured out in 2009. I was still trying to get off of diet soda when I found you guys. You guys, like Charles by that point, had it pretty well figured out. But, you know, some of you came along when I did, and we were all like trying to decide what works for us and observing as people were then trying it in large groups to see what works for other people. So that requires some debate, some argument, and some observation. The number one question when they heard I was going to be talking to longtime carnivores, I don't know if y'all could predict what the question would be. It's not cholesterol, because I thought
that about poop, knowing those people.
Nope. They want to know, have they ever cheated? And I'm like, I've never cheated.
Right.
I think if you're like me, that question starts to feel a little funny for a couple of reasons. Because number one, I lost my desire to, it doesn't feel like it would be a cheat at all anymore. Cheating makes it sound like I'm doing something in my favor, right? Whereas in this case, what they're implying is, have you guys eaten any carbs in the past 10, 11, 12 years, 13 years, Charles? And that wouldn't feel like a cheat to us. It would feel like our own demise at this point. And I don't think any of us have a big desire to. That said, I don't think any of us, if we were to have taken a bite of something, for example, I had some pickles when I was pregnant with Julia. I don't consider that anymore like, well, I wasn't carnivore when I was pregnant with her. So it's sort of a funny question to me, but does anybody want to give your thoughts about cheating?
I've got some thoughts about that. I was a terrible recidivist for years. Like, I was like the most carb addicted person I've ever heard of. So I would go zero carb for a while, and like for some reason my head would go stupid, and I would like, usually what would happen is I wouldn't think just randomly, oh, I want some ice cream. Usually what would happen is I'd go through some stress or whatever, and like I would start wanting Diet Coke, and that was always like the slippery slope into bad news. But eventually I figured out that if I just stay away from almost all plant flavors, then that takes care of cravings completely for me. So even if you're struggling really hard with cravings, you can get past them. And for me, the key was to go almost completely abstinent with plant flavors. Like, one of my favorite things to eat on zero carb is like Cajun wings, but anything that's really hot and spicy I think that has something to do with blood sugar, because back when I was a carb eater, I just loved spicy food. Spicy food was my whole thing. And but I think with anything that's based on like hot peppers, that tends to really mess with people's blood sugar, and it can lead to cravings.
I would say a couple things about that. There have been things that I never completely eliminated from the get-go. Number one being coffee. And I know that it's up for debate whether you even consider drinking coffee a cheat. But I have also had over the years, from time to time, things like a pickle, dark chocolate, and I've eaten sashimi where I'll sometimes have, like, I'll always have the wasabi and soy, which is spices. So again, it's kind of a borderline. And then one thing that I completely abstained from alcohol for the first 5 years. And then I tried having some alcohol in 2014. And I drank some whiskey, and I found that I didn't have a bad reaction. I think a lot for me, what drove the utter compliance was that I was coming from suicidal depression, and it was ruining my family life. And I just felt like I can't risk going back to that. So that really made it harder for me to even consider falling off the wagon, even if I didn't know if it would really throw me. And alcohol was something that I was very cautious about. But when that appeared to be safe, there was a period where I then kind of overdid it and was drinking a lot. And I've had wine and whiskey, and I think that I do okay with them. But in the long run, I feel like I can do that and be okay, and it doesn't affect the parameters that I'm here for. But I feel my best if I limit that to special occasions.
Yeah.
And I think that, when you compare the carnivore community to, for instance, the vegan community has this big moral idea about, if you eat something that's not a plant, then you've really betrayed the moral concept behind veganism.
Right.
Whereas I think, like you said, Kelly, if you cheat on carnivore, the only person you're cheating is yourself. And so you have to figure out how much your body is going to tolerate things and how much it means to you to make those trade-offs. And then it's not a moral issue, but rather, just choices about what makes you happy.
Sometimes that's interpreted as dogmatic because we're so strict with ourselves, and it's interpreted as you must follow the rules. I don't must follow anything. I just know how I feel my best.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And it's cool that we're talking about this because I think as a group, we've always felt that way, at least kind of on the inside, that, there wasn't, if we had arguments and stuff, it was usually because there was somebody trying to come in and give us a rule. And our whole thing was, there's no rule. We don't have a rule. We're not bound by this or that. We don't care what you think about if we eat this or eat that or whatever. That's our thing. That's our relationship with our food. That's really not something that we need to debate you about,
Right. So. I think for me, what I tell people when they're struggling to make it work is it can be simplified to two things. First is don't undereat, because I stumbled into zero carb in 2011, was doing really great. I was extremely overweight and I had lost a ton of weight. I was the thinnest I had ever been, but I was making the mistake of also doing low calorie. And I fell off the wagon. I gained 80 pounds in 6 months. And it wasn't until 2013 that I finally figured out I am just sick enough and fat enough and depressed enough and not able to have babies and all of these things. I need to try this and do it the right way. And I mean, Charles and Kelly were yelling at me every day to eat more meat. And I was like, but I don't want to get fatter. And those were the discussions we would have. So learning to feed your body and nourish it, even if it goes against what you've been ingrained your entire life that you have to limit. I probably eat more than like a lumberjack man now, but I'm satiated. And then also what I tell people is when you're going back and forth from eating carbs to maybe not eating carbs or you're low carb, there's always that mental hurdle where you're negotiating with yourself, which is how much could I have before it spirals out of control, or how much can I have before it, impacts my body or my mind or how I'm functioning. And so really the fight to not cheat isn't even there. It's just autopilot now. I'm a wolf. I eat my meat and I go on with my life, and it isn't a mental struggle anymore. But to get through those first, for some people it's a couple months. For me, maybe it was a couple years of really fighting, what I'd been taught and kind of, what habits and dietary things I thought were supposed to be the normal and healthy route. But yeah, the secret has just been in eating a lot of meat and drinking a lot of water. It's pretty simple once you get past all those mental hurdles.
And you're sitting there with all that beef outside too. I tell you.
Yes, yeah. It's a good thing to have around, I guess, if you're going through a lot of beef. And sometimes my husband will question how many cows I go through. But maybe I'll get him on board one day too. That's always the goal.
Yeah, I'll add to the cheat discussion in that I have a lot of people that ask me, is it okay occasionally to have a cheat meal? Or can I have a cheat day and get right back on it? And what will that do? And, everybody's individual. And if you come from a real strong addictive background, and some people actually don't realize how addicted they are to carbs and sugar, but it really just puts you back on that horrible roller coaster because it's a slippery slope. Once you have that cheat meal, there's some of us that need total abstinence and we can't moderate it. And every time you try to moderate it, it goes down a bad path again, and you feel like you're in this desperate hole of, what am I doing, and trying to get out. So that's really, it comes from experience. And I tell people, don't beat yourself up about a quote unquote cheat. I said, call that a learning experience and just move on from it.
Let's just go ahead and be clear though. When we're saying like, okay, I had some pickles when I was pregnant with Julia, and Amber, had a little bout there with some alcohol, but do any of us take cheat days where we just throw it out the window? Not me. How about you guys?
No.
I mean, people literally will say you can't do carnivore without cycling in and out some carbs and having cheat days and carb days. I did not assume any of us were doing that. I have not done that. Okay. Number 2, people want to know, do we eat organs regularly? If you do you just do it because you like them? Or is it because you seriously think that you should? Now, to some of us, I see you laughing. I know. I laugh too because I didn't touch organ meat.
Is Amber like eating organs right now?
No, I had that skirt steak. It's one of my favorites.
Okay.
I did, by the way, audience, tell them that if they wanted to bring some food, that 6 o'clock, it's dinner time. I've got a plate of burger patties. Amber has some skirt steak. Jennifer,
I've got some eggs.
got some eggs. Okay, I invited anybody that wanted to bring food, but not everybody was hungry, so that's fine. Okay, so I have recently tried eating some organs, not because I think they're required. Obviously, 11 years was a long run without them, and I felt great. But I thought, let's see what this is all about. Y'all, I had a histamine type reaction to where I got very stuffy. My eyes were itchy. I was eating them every day, to be fair, every day for about a month. So thoughts on organs. There's my thoughts. My thoughts are right now, I'm off of the organs at the moment. It didn't seem to I didn't like suddenly have fairy dust around me. Nothing new and exciting happened. I was stuffy. That's about it.
No, I was going to say, Kelly, you could have actually started with once a week instead of every single day for 30 days straight.
You went all in.
Go big or go home, Lisa. If you're going to do it, let's do it.
Carnivores do not know how to do moderation.
No.
So what is
I'm
that?
going to eat it
Liver every day.
What is
every
that?
day.
Right. Yes.
On a truckload. No,
Yes.
I understand that I probably could handle a little bit. I know. Okay, do any of you regularly eat organs?
No.
No.
Maybe. I don't know what you mean by regularly. It would be less often. I would go for months without eating organs.
Okay.
But this is going to sound gross to people who aren't, accustomed to it, but I've gotten really into brains in the last couple of years.
Okay.
I really like them. And I'll get a package that will have like 6 or 7 of these little lamb brains, and I'll just eat one every day until they're gone. But then I might not do that again for a couple months. So it's not like I have this planned idea to eat organs, but I eat them sometimes, and that might look like regularly sometimes.
But you like them, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's the real question. Do you have some sort of, theory about, and that's why you eat them? Or do you just eat them because you like them?
Do we think it's important or required? And if you do, seriously, don't hold back. You can tell folks, you are the experts. You've been doing it forever.
Yeah, I've written so much about it, but honestly, I'm going to tell you honestly, I have no experience. I say no, I don't think you need them, but I can't sit here and say that they're not whatever because I just simply don't eat them. So I really have no experience with them.
Okay.
You can't deny that they are full of a lot of nutrients, but you also can't deny that there are many people like us who just haven't been eating them and haven't seen, you would think there would be a consequence by now, right?
Yeah.
So you have to take both of those things into account. And it wouldn't be the first time that a low-carb diet would result in some kind of unexpected metabolic state that wouldn't be predictable from our previous models. So we can't ignore that.
If we would look at it from like the Sioux Native Americans hunting buffalo on the prairie of South Dakota back in the day, like there would have only been one heart and one liver to share amongst everyone. So maybe they would have enjoyed it as like a delicacy, but it wouldn't have been like their regular mainstay. And I'll say, we butcher whole beef and put it in our freezer. And honestly, the liver and the heart and the tongue goes to the barn cats. So no, we're not. Yeah, but maybe I should incorporate it. I don't know.
That's what I read in the literature. Like you could read about all sorts of populations and you find the same stories. And, the majority of the meat is where? Like along the back, the fat, all that, the ribs, stuff like that. That's what you eat. These little organs, there's not enough really to go around. So to say that was some sort of thing that everybody had to have every day or in some sort of thing, it just really makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
That does make sense to me, especially not every single day. And even once a week, you're right. In a large group of people, everybody isn't going to be eating that liver once a week.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. Amber, do you, on the weeks when you do choose to eat all of the organs, do you suddenly feel like the magic? No.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Same. All right. So I think our stance at zeroing in on health always was and still is. It's meat. So if you like it, eat it. No shame from us. It's meat. Enjoy. Don't worry about the carbs. Some people say you can't eat the organs because of the carbs. We don't believe that either. It's meat. If you like it, eat it. I'm glad when it doesn't go to waste. Honestly, that's great. Even if it's Amanda's cat. Right?
Yeah.
I'm okay with wasting it. That's
but
me.
if you don't like it, we don't see any reason. We have not personally, in a decade each or so of carnivore, have not personally experienced any lack without it or any benefit when we add it. Fair enough?
Yeah. I wouldn't eat it every day, Kelly, though.
Okay. No, lesson learned. You don't have to tell me twice. Yeah, my body let me know loud and clear. That's too much, girl. So, pardon me. Have any of you had any major health concerns during your time of carnivore? You all look quite healthy. Everyone still alive and feeling good?
Yeah. It's funny, I'm like Terry in the sense that, like, I haven't worried about COVID at all, but I'm always worried that I'd be some sort of carrier of it or something. You know what I mean? Like she's saying, but no. Yeah.
So Terry just told us before we started recording, Terry told us that she has just gotten through having COVID, her and her husband, right, Terry?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
yep.
And at your age, you said that people were obviously watching you like, oh my gosh, this is it, poor Terry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how did it go for you?
I was totally asymptomatic. I would have not, if they hadn't tested me, I would have never known that I was positive.
I know that you had a lot of health issues prior to starting a carnivore diet.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, looking at that now and seeing how other people have dealt with COVID, especially in your age group, I assume that you feel pretty glad that you've done this carnivore thing and think that it probably helped you.
Yeah. It took me by surprise, particularly because I was locked up with my husband.
You also had it with symptoms, right? He did have symptoms, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He had them. He got hammered pretty good.
Right.
And I was, I have a 500 square foot house, so we couldn't distance that much.
I think that's remarkable.
I know.
Yeah, it is. So during my stint of carnivore, I have stayed really healthy, even though I'm in an elementary school surrounded by all of the things. They come and go with every big stomach bug known to man, and they'll come right up in your face and go, Miss Hogan, I don't feel good. And you're like, oh my gosh. Okay, but I've stayed healthy. But I've been very open about it. I did have to have my gallbladder removed 2 years ago. Now, the doctor said, no, I don't think that had anything to do with your diet. We remove gallbladders from carb eaters all the time. You had just had a baby. You were an older mom, and it's pretty common in older moms right after delivery. But that's my one health concern, I guess, during my time. If any of you want to share, it's totally up to you.
I myself have not had any health issues, fortunately, so I don't have anything to share with that, and I'm so happy to report that.
Awesome.
That is awesome.
Okay, so another big buzz topic right now in carnivore, and it's not like this is new. We've heard about, electrolytes and supplements being super important for many, many years, right? Many years. This is not a new tune, is it, Charles? Okay, so how are the supplements and the electrolytes going in each of your lives right now? Amber, you don't take any supplements or electrolytes? No.
I have taken supplements from time to time, but electrolytes are not something that I have felt the need for. Okay. Unless I'm drinking a lot of water. That tends to make me get cramps, and then, I don't know, it throws everything off.
Okay, so you have tried them. Yes. And there are times when you feel like they're helpful?
Well, it's really complicated, Kelly, and I didn't really answer your health question. Maybe I could briefly say something. I'll try to be brief. The first 8 years of carnivore, not only did I have no health issues, like I didn't even have a cold.
Yeah.
I used to have a cold every year. I used to get cold sores once or twice a year. I used to, it would be normal to get some kind of flu or something. And for 8 years, not a single cold, not a single virus, not a single thing. And then about 3 years ago, I had this cycle where I got food poisoning. I got Campylobacter, and then I had antibiotics, and then I had Salmonella, and then I had more antibiotics. And I'm not really sure what was the beginning, like how to unravel what happened. But I started gaining weight, and I started having fatigue. And it's taken me about 3 years to recover from all of that. And throughout that time, I tried all kinds of supplements, and most of them did nothing. So it would be very inaccurate to say that I've never had supplements on many levels. But if you just go back to the time where I was completely healthy, and if you go to now, even now, I'm not taking electrolytes, and I think that electrolytes are probably more important for people who are just, keto adaptation, basically. Like you're gonna have these imbalances as you're adjusting, but then going forward, I don't necessarily think that's a thing for most people.
I didn't even know what electrolytes were. So.
Okay, Lisa, electrolytes?
Yeah, no, none ever. And again, I have told people back when we were on that original forum journaling with each other, that really wasn't a topic. There was some people, we would talk occasionally about cramps or cramping. We'd talk about hydration and salt and little things like that. But there was none of this, these electrolyte companies that put out these packets, and it's, the magnesium and the potassium and the sodium all mixed in, and to me it's so complicated. I just go back to ancestral man. We hunted animals and we ate them. They weren't going on Amazon to buy electrolytes or a GNC store, are you really going to take supplements the rest of your life, and for what reason? I just don't see that is natural and normal. And that's what I always try to go back to is really what is intended naturally for our bodies to do. And sucking down magnesium, potassium, and sodium, I think we should, somehow be getting it just through our meat that we eat. So
yeah.
Charles? I have a question. Where did the salt thing come from? Now I always see these people coming in, meat, water, salt, meat, water, salt. What? Like, what is that? What?
Yeah. It's a food group, Charles. It's a food group. Hello.
I'm not saying I don't ever season anything, but I certainly don't go out of my way, like for a salt shaker or like everything has to. How gross is that? I'm just curious. Like, when did that start? We've been doing this a long time. And it just seems like in the last couple of years, maybe when Dr. What's his name? The body.
Nickel Antonio.
And all them, but I never understood that. Like,
I think it's coming in from the keto community. Who knows where it started from, but I don't think it was through carnivores. I think a lot of people come to carnivore through keto, and they just bring all the stuff that they already believe to it.
So I do use salt when I want it. I like my burger patties to have some salt on them. Typically, some of you may have heard this. I get a lot of burger patties from McDonald's, and
you?
No way.
McDonald's? Ew.
And they do salt them there unless you ask them not to. And I have gone, in fact, I think maybe my first 2 years of carnivore, back in those days, you weren't even like hardcore meant that you didn't use salt. Right. Not that you forced on the salt.
Right.
When I first met you guys, y'all were pretty much a non-salt community. So I just fell in line with what y'all were doing. I would go and get my burger patties, ask for no salt. I did not add any salt. And when I cooked steaks, there was no seasoning at all, because that's how all you hardcore weirdos were doing it. No seasonings. And I wanted to be hardcore like you. Nowadays, hardcore means you're taking your water and just pouring it in and chugging the salt.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why that came in.
And our no salt thing was never like a rule. This is how you do it. You don't have salt or whatever. It was in response to somebody saying we needed it. And
Yeah.
so we were like, no, we don't. And
Right.
and in fact, it seems like when we started, after being on it 6 months or something, by the time you got the 6 months, you were kind of sick of salt. It was like kind of gross to you, or you just forgot about it altogether. And that's kind of what you gravitated towards. So we start telling new people, well, this is probably where you're going. So, or people would say, well, I have all these cravings. I have this kind of stuff. And we were thinking, well, maybe some of the seasoning that you use, maybe that's making you eat more of it than you normally might or whatever. We didn't know. So that was the guess, but it certainly wasn't any kind of rule.
Right. Do all of you use salt to taste, or do any of you find it to be super beneficial to use it or not use it? Any strong feelings in this group about salt?
I've always liked salt quite a bit. No, my idea of what a strong salty flavor has diminished a lot, to the point where I don't even like bacon at all. But like, I've always put salt on my meat, and like a year ago, I moved here to Arizona. It's of course really dry, and I've always been kind of dried out. Like my hands got really dry, and drank a lot of water. And so a few months ago, I thought, well, why don't I try this salt thing? Because people are saying, well, if you have more salt, then it retains the water, and you feel more hydrated. So I tried that. I added like a teaspoon of salt to a liter of water, and it doesn't taste too bad. It's a little salty, but it's not bad. And so for a few days, I felt like I felt good. Like I was more hydrated and everything. And another thing, I was getting a lot of foot cramps because I was dehydrated, and foot cramps went away for a few days. And then it seems like my body got used to having all this extra salt into it, and like all the benefits went away. So I just said, well, that's not working, obviously. And so I decided to go in completely the opposite direction and not use any salt at all. And that seemed to work better, actually, because I was drinking maybe half as much water as I was before without the salt. So like keeping salt minimal is working really well for me. And I don't want to like negate the people who say they feel much, much better with the salt, because I mean, how do you argue with that, really?
Yeah.
But it is possible that people end up having so much salt that it just becomes a cycle where you need more and more of it. And I remember the bear, Owsley Stanley, saying something about how when he was a kid, he took ballet lessons. And at that time in the 50s or something, like all of the athletes were always taking these salt pills. And if they didn't take these salt pills, they would be passing out. Well, nobody takes salt pills these days. So I'm thinking that whatever amount of salt you take in, your body gets used to it. And whatever it ends up, wherever your equilibrium is, if you move from that, your body will eventually get used to it.
I just salt my food to taste. I never went through any experimental period of eliminating it. I just salt lightly to taste, and I've never had an issue with cramps or craving it or anything like that.
Okay. Amanda, you salt to taste?
Yeah, it's not really. Yeah, I tried like a week of not, and yeah, it's just not a huge thing I think about too much. It's just like, I feel like, but then too, I could see where people coming in think these people are like crazy purists, and they just, like they eat the meat and the water and they don't think about anything. But I used to think about everything a lot and really, weigh it all out. What was I doing? And isn't it always Dana that would say, like, just eat what you enjoy? And so in the beginning, if that meant pork rinds or salami or pepperoni or something, I think sometimes this can look really intimidating from the outside in, or if you're just coming into it, and it just gets simpler over time, that you don't feel like you have to have wild variety. But I don't think it's bad to have those things to get you through maybe those times where you'd rather have a cupcake, and then 3 months later you're wondering what you're doing with your life. So I think that's always a good note to make to people, that you can nitpick it all you want, or you can make it as relaxed as you want to, that it makes sense and is practical. Maybe others disagree, I don't know. But
not us. I don't think you're going to have much disagreement in this group. Tony, do you salt to taste?
Go through phases. Right now, I'm putting salt on stuff, but I've gone to even the extreme of rinsing my bacon because I didn't want salt.
All right. So most of us are just salsa tasters and really don't give it much thought. We're not guzzling down glasses and glasses of salt water each day. If we want to experiment with it, it sounds like some of us have tried, but it was kind of like, it didn't change much, or it certainly wasn't sustainable results, right, Jennifer?
Right.
Yeah, I can see that. I go through phases where I want no salt and phases where I want all of the salt or I just crave it. And it really comes and goes. My lunch group, they never know what to expect. Sometimes I'll show up with a salt shaker, and then other times I'm like, oh my gosh, this is way too salty, and I haven't even put anything on it. Okay, let's talk about all of our extended fasting that we do.
I'm laughing in part because I have tried extended fasting recently. I've recently fasted for 10 days, and it was an interesting experience, but it's not something that I've been doing all along or that I think is an important part of the carnivore experience. In fact, to the contrary, I think that the fasting mindset, it can tie along with the idea that you have to calorie restrict, and you can, not be paying attention to your body signals, which is one of the whole points, I think, of our way of doing carnivore or zero carb, is that you're learning to pay attention to the body signals, and fasting requires actively, ignoring them.
Yes.
So I have experimented with fasting. I have not ever found any amazing results from fasting, even with those extended periods. I've had weight loss, but it's always transient, and I think it can be more of a derailer than a help, even though, some people obviously swear by it.
Yeah, some people love going without food. I mean, I never believed that was a thing, because it's like me saying I really love going without air. I can't, it doesn't make sense to me. Mm-hmm. But some people say they just love fasting, and I'm like, okay, if you're loving it and you're feeling good, I've given it a shot too. It was a very long time ago. I hated every last minute. People swore it would get easier after the second day or something. I was like, nope. I hate the third day, and then I'd hate the fourth, and it never felt better. And then eventually I ate and thought, and what was that for? For me, it was not good times. Do any of you have any other fasting extended? I don't mean like, oh, I've made it 16 hours. Like, you're literally going more than a day on purpose. You're hungry, but on purpose, not eating.
I've tried just out of curiosity for, people that I coach. Some do very, very well with, fasting, whether it's 36, 72 hours. So I was doing it sort of as an experiment just to see my own experience with it. I know for me personally, I'm very uncomfortable once I get that hunger feeling, and I don't like to have to fight through it. And I don't know whether part of it is coming from a background of eating disorders, and that I just don't think it's, in my opinion and in my experience, really beneficial for anybody who struggles with that kind of background. And ultimately, unless it's something that you, I don't want to say enjoy, but or some people actually do. They feel like they get some sort of cleansing out of it and a benefit to it. But realistically, even if some people do this 36 hours twice a week, or, 72 hours every other week. And like, realistically, are you going to continue that the rest of your life? Like, you need to just do whatever it is that's going to keep you healthy, keep you at a good ideal weight, and just move on. Unless, I know even some people do alternate day fasting, and that's how they just go about their life. And I guess it's great if you're comfortable with it. But if it's something that you're pushing and forcing yourself to do, you have to think about, like, is this sustainable?
Charles, how's the fasting going, man?
I think I've written extensively on this subject, so I won't add any more, but it's just not happening.
You eat every day?
Yes, 3 times, sometimes 4. I eat a lot, but I work a lot. I mean, with COVID, I guess I'm teleworking from like 7:30 to 4, but then I go to FedEx in the evenings, and then I work that till like 10 or 11, and it's a lot of strenuous package handling and whatnot. I don't even run as much anymore. I probably get out on a Sunday for 8 miles or so, and that's it. But yeah, I have to eat. Yeah.
You know, a lot of people will say, "Oh, would trust me on this one, Charles," after we did that one fasting episode saying that we do not practice fasting, and here's why. Oh, Lordy, the autophagy comments. Well, you know you're not getting the autophagy.
Is that how you say it? Oh, okay.
Well, see, that's how you don't know why, because you're not getting it, Charles. And you're clearly suffering a lot from this, as are the rest of you. So,
okay.
All right, look, there is some research talking about autophagy, and I have flat out been told that you cannot get rid of loose skin when you lose weight without extended fasting to clear out your cells. No. Amber, have you heard this before about the loose skin and the autophagy? Yes. I'm not making this up, right?
No.
No, this is a thing. Okay. And I was like, but I did have loose skin. I have lost 120 pounds. And it's not still hanging here, and I haven't done extended fasting except for that one time that I hated. And so that can't be true. It can't be true for everybody, right? It's not.
Yeah, and the opposite also, like some people say, if you do extended fasting, it will get rid of loose skin, and that's not a guarantee either.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I've seen enough concentration camp pictures to know that there's loose skin. I mean, I've seen it. That's not a pretty look. So I don't understand. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Starvation does not automatically get rid of loose skin.
Well, I can tell you that the idea behind it is if you're forcing your body to get protein from wherever it can get it, then you're going to break down the things that aren't needed. And that's the idea behind autophagy, right? So I understand where the idea is coming from. I just think that the idea's gone a little bit beyond the evidence.
Yeah.
Like so many things. And which brings you to fasting in general. Like, you know, when you go without food, are you really not eating or are you not? And I think you're eating still. I think you're eating your own fat and protein, but you're still eating. So whether it's coming endogenous or exogenous, your body's still eating, right? So I don't think there's much to that. That's why, you know, and so like if you got a bad diet and then you fast and things improve, well, then okay, so your body switched over to eating something better than it did before you started the fasting. But if you're already eating meat and drinking water.
Right. And so a lot of people might see benefits from fasting because, and even if they're not eating like a terrible diet, there's something in their diet that they're not as tolerant to and they don't understand that. And they say, oh, well, I feel really good when I fast. Yeah. But unless you're comparing it to something where you've removed a lot of the, you know, very inflammatory kinds of foods, you won't know if it's from eating itself or if it's from something particular that you were eating.
Right. And when you get sick, I mean, or at least I know from my experience, if I ever get sick, I don't want to eat. My body's like, no, you know, my dogs, he used to, when he would get sick, and either eat some grass to like get rid of whatever, or his thing would be, I'm not eating. And it made sense. It's like, okay, this is what you were eating is not good. So you don't want to eat any more of it. I get that. But yeah.
Well, we've always said also that a lot of the benefits that people get from fasting, the lower steady blood sugar, and, you know, the hormone balances, we are already getting that by eliminating that carb craziness and just eating meat anyway. Yeah. The only difference is that I am full and happy and you are not. So, yeah.
I will say one thing on those hormonal markers. When I did that 10-day fast, I took blood work at day 5. And I have had, at least ever since this latest thing with the gut infections, my insulin's higher than you would expect it to be for a healthy person. Like it's around 8, whatever the units are. And when I measured it on those 4 days, it was lower than it has ever been since I've measured it as a carnivore. And that could be a benefit for some people, and you can't. So I can't say that it doesn't have an effect.
Right. Oh, sure it does. Yeah. Yeah. The question, I guess, is always risk reward. Like, you know, is this benefit enough to go without that and suffer in other ways that it makes it worth it? I'm sure there's something good to it. I mean, people, the stories people report about fasting, I mean, you can't deny them. I mean, it's great. Some people fast for 100 days and all this, and they report all this great. And people who get sick, they go to a fasting type of therapy and they get better. No doubt about it. But for the regular person, if you're trying to eat healthy and establish a diet for yourself that really works, the question is, should fasting be a part of that or not? That's really kind of the issue, right? You know, is the reward of that worth it, that you would sacrifice other things?
That's a good way of putting it.
I agree. And to me, it's not personally worth it because I am unhappy and I feel miserable and I do not enjoy my life when I am literally hungry and thinking about food all the time. It's not worth it to me. Now, if I had a major health concern and someone said, you know, maybe if you did some extended fasting, it could help with the brain tumor or something. I'm not saying I would never be willing to try a supplement, an electrolyte, or fasting. But for my day-to-day life, when I'm feeling awesome, it's not worth it to me to give up, you know, a happy, wonderful day for the sake of being hungry when I'm controlling my weight and my blood sugar and everything is good. And I'm eating food that I like. I'll be like, you know, I'm feeling great. I'm going to go nail a nail through my palm. Like, why would I do that? I'm feeling so good.
Right.
Yeah.
Over the years, we get a lot of this criticism for supposedly being dogmatic or whatever, but I just want to re-stress that when we help people in these forums and Facebook and all of this stuff, we're trying to deal with the average person, like a person who comes in who generally probably was skinny when they were growing up. They got in their 20s, college, whatever, they got obese, and then they now come and they're trying to get themselves back together. No serious health issues or whatever, just common obesity. So the advice that we sort of put out for that really addresses that. People who come with, you know, obviously there's all sorts of background and things that people come with. So when we say no fasting, no this, no that, or whatever, we're really talking about for sort of the average situation.
Yeah.
We can't speak to every single situation. Some things are going to benefit a person that don't benefit everybody else. Don't deny that. We don't. The question is, because this helps Sally, who has a lifelong, you know, condition of this, and this helped her, so now should you do it because you read about Sally? And we're saying, no, you just do the regular stuff, take it easy, don't worry about it until something happens. Then we can address it. But don't just come in here with this idea that your head's going to explode in 3 days and now you should, I don't know, eat 3 things of salt just to make sure that, you see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, the blanket advice is, I think, what's always killed us. I mean, can you imagine if a type 1 diabetic showed up and was like, guys, I got to tell you, insulin really makes me feel better, so you should all give it a shot. We'd be like, okay, that makes no sense. That's what your body needs. That doesn't mean that my body needs it.
Exactly.
So, but I can't deny that they may feel better with insulin, right?
For sure. Exactly.
Right. But I think the reason it's dogmatic is we don't, in our group at least, allow people to come in and say insulin is required for everybody.
Exactly.
Because that's irresponsible and crazy.
Right.
we also don't want people coming in and saying extended fasting is required for everybody. Large amounts of salt is required for everybody. Right. Tons of organ meats, supplements, electrolytes. That's what kills us, is because we know we're not doing any of those things and we feel really good. So don't put that on everybody. But somehow putting those things on people is seen as less dogmatic.
Right, exactly, right. And we have more people who are like Amanda here, who said that, like, at the beginning she did this or that, and then, you know, she took her advice, she worked it out, and all of a sudden it worked. And we see that over and over and over again. So if we see 80 people and this worked well for them, then the 81st person, guess what? This is probably what we're going to say. Yeah. Again, not dogmatic, nothing. It's just that this is what we see.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not a doctor. I don't know everything, but I know a whole bunch of people, and I know what kind of worked.
Okay. CGM monitors right now are a pretty big deal.
What's that?
Continuous glucose monitors. So I'll say that when I first was trying to go low carb, I did prick my finger a lot because I was very curious. This was before I even found you guys. I just was doing very low carb and discovered that some days I would gain weight and other days I didn't. And I was just so curious, such a little novice scientist. I wanted to test my blood sugars. And I found out that low carb things like sugar-free candies actually made my blood sugar go up. I was testing all day long. I was just so curious. And peanuts made my blood sugar go up. But then I would eat a steak and it didn't. I was like, okay. So that's part of what led me to this, was just continuously checking my own blood sugar. I shouldn't say continuous. Now, legit, it's a continuous patch that gives a nonstop reading of your blood sugars. Now, to people who are experimenting with keto, carnivore, low carb, I can definitely, from personal experience, see how that would lead you in a positive direction and can be useful, right? Like, wow, I ate a salad with tomatoes and I didn't see that coming, but my blood sugar went up. You know, that's good data.
Yes.
However, I get offered CGMs quite a bit, and I'm like, why would I use one? Because every day I'm just eating meat, and I know what it does to my blood sugar. Nothing. It would be very boring, and I have tested it a lot when I was pregnant because I had to. I refused the the big drink that you're supposed to take. So I refused that, and I guess as my punishment, I had to constantly take my blood sugar readings for weeks. And I was just writing down the same number all the time. It was basically 89. It was just where mine stays. 88, 89, 90, right there all day, every day. Do any of you currently, or have you experimented with monitors? There's the Aura Ring right now. I think that monitors sleep, or CGMs. There's a lot of monitor stuff out there right now for carnivores. Do any of you have one? No.
I think I've had my blood sugar tested once in the past 12 years. It was like 77, so whatever.
Nobody? Nothing.
But I can tell you that Steve Cooksey has done lots of experiments with it too, and shown just what you did, that his blood sugar stayed stable.
Yeah.
Because he goes in and out of being carnivore and stuff, and he does a lot of experiments. And he's shown it time and time again that he can keep it, when he's carnivore, he can keep his blood sugar at a normal rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's diabetes in my family, and so when I made that dietary change, it was more to like prove a point, like, hey, look at what happens when you do this, and it got really boring really quick because you eat a steak and nothing happens. So, yeah.
My parents are both diabetic and my brother's diabetic, so I do play around with testing my glucose every so often, just out of curiosity. I go back to the same thing of not obsessing over like a lot of this, because I just don't think that there's going to be anything that's so far out of whack without you being symptomatic about it and triggering you to go get it tested. I also do it because some of the diabetics that I speak with, they tend to do much better with a higher fat ratio and say that their insulin or their glucose spikes when they do higher protein. Yeah. So I was curious on that too. So I played around with that. But yeah, other than that, I have not yet done a CGM.
I did, in my experimenting, find that higher fat meats had less of an effect on blood sugar than when I ate super lean. So just a normal steak to me with fat on it had basically no effect on my blood sugar because there's plenty of fat in it. But I don't know if you're familiar with a London broil. Is an incredibly lean meat that is usually trimmed completely of its fat. And one time I ate 1.5 pounds, I think, of London broil without adding any fat. And my blood sugar, it's not like it skyrocketed. It just went up some, but it did go up some. Did you find when you played around some, Lisa, that it did have an effect, the fat?
Yeah, I do. I think for people who are, metabolically damaged, that I think it has an even more of an effect. Their bodies can't handle certain amounts of protein. So again, it's an individual journey, and gradually over time, you'll come to figure out exactly what works for you.
Yeah, and that was always the biggest proponent of that protein to glucose theory, was your diabetic. But the truth is, for the diabetic, anything they eat is going to make their blood pressure go up. So it wasn't just a meat thing, but that's the way they come to the group. I'm type 2, I eat meat, and it goes up. So therefore, I have to limit my protein.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's true. Anything they ate was going to make it go up some, because that's part of the nature of that issue.
Yes.
Yeah. But we have seen many type 2s be able to, by eliminating carbs for a longer period of time, then suddenly they're not type 2s anymore. Like, yeah, they're just eating and it doesn't spike, and they don't have to keep adding so much fat. They can eventually process it. But I do think in the beginning, a really lean meat, you know, sometimes people start carnivore and they think that means like chicken breast, because that's like the diet food of the meat world. Yeah. So they eat a lot of chicken breasts, and I don't think that's going to have the same effect on you as a fatty ribeye. Well, it's not.
And it does take some courage. If you're a type 2 and you're trying to use ZC to reverse it, you gotta, you know, you're gonna experience a couple months of some high blood sugar when you're eating this meat and stuff. But if you keep at it, it's gonna go lower and lower. It'll still keep spiking, but it's gonna be less and less. And over time, you'll see that thing sort of get under control. But you kind of have to have that patience to see that through. Not everybody can do it, but we've seen many people do it over the last decade, and it's nothing short of miraculous when it happens.
Yeah. You know, when we were talking about fasting, Amber, you said that your insulin numbers did come down when you did some fasting. So that could be one argument in the favor of people who like it. But at the same time, I have not fasted at all during the past 10 years. And I just recently had my fasting insulin checked, and it was 2.8, which is crazy low, right? And so when people tell me you're not going to fix insulin issues without fasting, I'm like, well, what should I be looking for? Lower than 2.8?
I think you could make it worse. I think the thing for the diabetic, for example, you want steady blood sugar. You don't want this. You don't want this up and down stuff. You want it to be steady. So for them, I'm always saying, you know, after every 4 hours or so, you probably need to be eating, and you need to kind of do it regularly. Whereas a normal person on ZC eat when hungry. But the diabetic, I think you need to eat a little bit more regularly so that you can avoid the spikes.
So I already know this about you guys because, you know, it's not like we're just meeting for the first time. And I've heard it come up on multiple topics today, is just the intuitiveness of it. And I know when I talked to Amber, I think on our last interview, we were saying that in the very beginning, when you're starting carnivore, you really don't have any intuition at all about your own body, because you're an addict coming off of an addictive substance. Everything is haywire. Your body is telling you to eat donuts, so you can't trust your body. But eventually, when you have done this for a long time, I think what all of us do now is very intuitive. If we are hungry, we eat meat. If we are thirsty, we drink. If we're not thirsty, we don't force it down. If we want salt, we add it. If we don't, we don't. And we trust that our blood sugars will be okay because we're eating the same things every day. We're not having to take supplements unless we do feel an issue come up. Then it, you know, could be that you have a leg cramp and want to try some magnesium or something, but not just because. All of this just because stuff, I think the longer someone does carnivore, the do it just because rules become more of like, no, my body is not telling me to do that. My body is not telling me that I need a supplement or that I need to go hungry or that I need any of that noise. It's just telling me, okay, I'm hungry or I'm not hungry. And if someone is having if someone has a more extreme health issue from their past that they need to deal with, there are things even within carnivore, the organs, the supplements, the fasting, the electrolytes, that could be experimented with, because we don't know what people have been through. So we're not shutting it out and saying, not carnivore, not carnivore. I think the main takeaway from this is we've been doing this a long time and we do feel very good. And we don't think that any of those so-called requirements, we have not personally found those to be true. What we have found to be true is listening to what our body tells us, eating plenty of meat. Amanda, you kicked us off with that, and I do think that's where so many people fail. They are under eating.
Yes.
And that is where a lot of the sickness comes from, and where I think a lot of people's problems come from. Not all, I know. Some people say, but I'm eating 3 pounds of meat a day. Okay. but I do think that is very common, is under eating. So trust your gut. Do what your body is telling you to do. If you do have further issues, there are people out there who will look at very specific health concerns and can help address it in a individual way, even via carnivore. I know that Judy Cho with Nutrition with Judy, she is really good to look at people's actual like gut readings on blood works. And, you know, we know not everybody falls into like the 80%. But if 80% of all humans could be helped by the simple version of eat meat, drink water, trust what your body is telling you, how amazing is that? I would love for you guys, if you have any further advice, this is your moment. Tell people what you have to say. I'm going to just start with Dr. Lisa.
Well, I think one of my main mantras all along with people who are coming into this is just be patient. This is not a quick fix of anything. It's not quick fix health, not quick fix weight. This is a journey to optimal health, and just be patient. Just enjoy the ride. Just, you know, pay attention to your non-scale victories, and just have in mind, just know that your goal is ultimately to get healthy and to your ideal weight, but it's not going to happen. I say you've been eating a certain way for decades, eaten garbage for decades, and now you can't expect even 6 months to reverse all that. And it's hard because people see on, you know, social media, the Transformation Tuesdays and all the, you know, these big, you know, grandiose success stories. But I said, you know what, just keep going. Just know that that's more the exception to have instantaneous results like that. And that's the way their body is showing it and healing. And it's not that way for everybody.
Yeah. Patience. Solid. That's good. Jennifer.
First of all, Charles, this is the first time I'm talking to you face to face. So I just want to thank you for starting this whole thing. I mean, all the thousands and thousands of people doing carnivore right now and changing their lives are doing it because you did more than you had to do all those years ago. So thank you for that. And also, I met my husband because of ZOIH, and I can't thank you enough for that either. So it's just all, I'm very grateful for you. You've had a big impact on my life. So thank you very much for that. All right. So anyway, send off message. Keep it simple. I mean, like the whole theme of this has been like all these extra things. It makes it so much harder to stick to zero carb. And if you can stick to it for 6 months, like it'll be smooth sailing, really. It's so worth it. Like I had food issues my entire life, like even when I was a little girl, but this can be treated. It really can be overcome. And, you know, alcoholics can abstain from alcohol and we can abstain from plants. And that's really what we need to do if we have food issues. So I think that's it.
Yeah. Good. By the way, Jennifer, you are the one that said, if you're doing carnivore just 90% of the way, you're actually missing out far more than just 10% of the results.
It's completely out of proportion. Like for me, even if I, like I said before, even if I over season my food, my head starts to get out of whack. It wakes up that little monster in the back of my head. But yeah, like that last 1% even of plant foods, it can make all the difference.
Yes. And that quote really resonated with a lot of people. I've heard Laura Spath refer to that also. That really, she was almost carnivore, and then she read where you said, you know, that last few percent can actually make a massive amount of difference in how you feel and in the cravings. I know we all know about that last little bit can hold you back from freedom from cravings. So yeah, I love that you said that. I had to give you credit here for it. So thank you. All right, Amber, what you got, girl?
Well, I like to talk about theory a lot, and I know sometimes people look to me for theory, like they want a reason to do carnivore. Like they say, please tell me what I can tell my friends so that they'll stop eating plants. And they're looking for something like, oh, plants have lectins in them or something like that, so don't eat them. But I think that's the backwards thing to do. Like the reason I look at theories because I have found something to work, and I'm really curious about why that would be. And when it comes down to a question of what I'm going to do in my life, I don't do it because plants have lectins. I do it because when I stop eating plants, I feel better. Yeah. And that's a trade-off that I've decided to make. And so if I, like we were talking about earlier, if I decide I'm going to have some whiskey, I'm going to do that because I've made a choice. You should always feel like what you're doing is based on choices, what actually affects you, and not because of some rule, not because of some theory, but because of what the effect is in your life. And even if that means I'm choosing to do something that's bad for me, that's still your choice. And maybe that's something that you want to do, and that's up to you.
Yeah. I like that. How everything affects us personally, that should be our goal. And that's exactly why I choose to be as strict as I am, is I really feel very good this way, and I really didn't feel good the other way. So that's a no-brainer. It's not because I'm trying to win some Carnivore of the Year award. I just feel best this way.
Yes.
Charles, you probably don't have any wisdom at all.
Not at all. Not at all. I think Amber stole my thunder. I think if there's anything I've ever said over the years is that, no matter what experience, what you've seen from all of us, really what matters is what happens when you eat meat and you drink water. Whatever happened to Charles is completely irrelevant for you because, if you get sick doing what I do, then it's not for you. You need to change it. Also, I think what I've learned is that, I try to, helping people even personally, is that you want to get folks to a routine. If I think about like a metaphor for life, people who live the longest or the healthiest or whatever, people kind of have this routine. They work the same job. They get in their car in the morning. They drive to the same place. They interact with the same people. They eat the same foods. They come home and then they rinse, repeat, and they kind of do it again. In such a life, you can sort of tell whenever anything goes awry. Their cars tend to be the safe, their insurance is the lowest or whatever, because they're doing the same things over and over, right? But when there's any sort of change, that's where you see, the car's not running right, this not running right, whatever. It's easy to spot the change. So when you eat the same foods, the same things over and over, it's easy to spot when there's something out of whack. We've all said, we check our blood pressure, we check our this or that. If we're eating the same things, the numbers don't change. But when we add something different, it's very easy to see, okay, I added that was the problem. You added organs, right?
Yeah.
You did it for a while and then you say, oh, something's wrong. That's the only thing I've added. Everything else is the same, the meat patties, whatever. So it's the same type of thing. So if nothing else that you can get from our experience is that I think all of us can tell you that we're probably creatures of habit. We don't stray very far from what it is that we do. We all kind of work the same, we eat the same things, and we can spot what's different in our lives. And I just think that there's something to that.
Yes, the ultimate elimination diet, right? If something goes wrong for James, oh my gosh, who on earth knows what he ate? He's like a goat. We have no clue. Was it the frozen pizza or that new flavor of ice cream? We don't know. If something goes different with me, this is a very short list of what I have changed. Was it 4 burger patties or 3? Now, I mean, you're right. Your results don't vary much when the input doesn't vary much. All right, Terry, our wise one.
I'm not very wise.
Wait, real quick, because Terry's a bit of a liar. She's actually extremely, extremely smart. Terry once told me, and she gave me marriage advice. This is different. This isn't necessarily DC, but she said the dance that couples do, it's like a dance. She said, this is the dance that you do. Nobody else can cut in on your dance and know how to perform in that dance except the 2 people who are working at it. That advice, that was like, I've carried that over. It was just amazing, just mind-blowing stuff. And it's so true. It's like you can, on the outside, you can look at a relationship and you think that, oh, this person should do this or that, but you don't know anything about that relationship until you're actually a dancer in that relationship. And Terry taught me that, and I'll never forget it. So no, I love Terry. Terry's very smart. So don't let her lie that, oh, I'm not that smart. All right, go ahead.
I fib a lot.
I do love that. And I do love you, Terry. You're so cool. You have always been so good to all of us.
Yeah.
All right, Miss Tony.
Try it for 6 months. And you will find just wonderful things happen. I don't ever get sick. I don't know. It's just the best thing ever. And I would encourage everyone to at least try it. I love where I'm at right now.
Awesome. Amanda, you have the hardest job at all. You're going last, but hey, one thing I didn't ask, grass-fed versus grain-fed, and I will say right here that Amanda and I did an entire episode talking about this. I personally prefer grain-finished meat myself. I have tried some grass-finished. As far as taste goes, I did not prefer the taste. And as far as how I felt exactly as good as I do any other time that I eat. But if people do want to know more information about that, man, our episode was killer on that topic. I loved it, so they can check that out. But Amanda, let's talk carnivore with you.
I'd say 3 things that people need to get over when they look at a carnivorous or zero carb diet. The first is that you're going to be ostracized because it's weird. It is super weird. It's not the norm. Most people are not going to be interested in adapting to it or joining you on the journey. But on the other side, if you can get through kind of the growing pains, you're going to feel like a warrior. And I think one of the biggest benefits I have is I'm like an Energizer bunny. I can just work and chase my kids and run my businesses and raise, just all the things I have to do. I just don't get tired. I'm just like, let's go. And 2, ditch the scales because they're your worst enemies. You think you see someone online and they weigh this much and you think, oh, why don't I weigh that much? Or why am I not losing weight fast enough? And I could rattle off a page worth of health benefits that I've experienced from going to this diet. The biggest one would be curing my infertility and getting pregnant and having 3 babies. And, I'm so grateful that I found that forum for that reason alone. But the list is long of why I think this is just such a great way of eating. And the third, I might touch on the ethical, environmental, and animal welfare aspect, because we see a lot of recovering vegans and vegetarians coming to this diet and they have this guilt about this cow that they've been told that they have to, kind of elevate even above their own health. And so from the rancher's perspective, I'll just touch briefly on those 3 things because that seems to be the hang up. The first would be on the environment, and that cows fart and they are destroying the planet with their methane it's traveled the world. It's kind of the bell that we can't unring in the beef industry. But the reality is that the U.S. beef industry contributes less than 3% of total greenhouse gas emissions. If every American were to go meatless on Mondays, we would reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by like less than a half a percentage point. So when I look at cattle in the environment, I see that they're grazing grass that's inedible. They're grazing things like right now corn stalks or beet pulp or cottonseed hulls or things that would just go to waste or end up in landfills. And they're upcycling this roughage, what would be the salads that we no longer eat, and they're converting it into this nutrient-dense beef. And then when we look at that animal and the fact that we're harvesting an animal and an animal, does die so that we can eat, from a farmer's perspective, I just grew up with the circle of life. So it's something that I take for granted. But I know for most people that their experiences with animals comes from their pets or movies. It's a harder pill to swallow. But I remind them by harvesting this animal and respecting its life and understanding that it's nourishing people, it's providing one of the most nutritious foods on the planet, packed with all these essential nutrients. And on top of that, we get all these byproducts that enrich our everyday lives, whether it's makeup or stearic acid in our tires or, the glossy print on our magazine covers. I mean, you'd be amazed at the byproducts you get from these cattle. So we're truly using them, utilizing them in a way that if we replaced a beef cow and tried to do it all synthetic, it would be even worse for the environment and the cows would have no purpose. And so ultimately, I just want to be able, I know that got long, but I want to be able to alleviate some of that guilt that people that are just so suffering and they just need a steak and they'll feel so much better if they can just get over that hurdle that they think they're hurting an innocent life. And so at the end of the day, if we respect that life and understand that it's enriching humanity and making people's lives healthier, that's I guess how I sleep at night. But I've been called some pretty terrible names for thinking that way. So I don't know.
Like, is she not the bomb? Like,
she is the bomb.
I love you guys too.
Yes. And we are so grateful that you raise the cattle. And we know that you love your animals. I see your posts all the time. People who have been removed from the circle of life, they think, at least, they try to be, by going vegan, they really assume that we hate the animals that we eat, or that we have no respect for animal life at all. I am so grateful to the animals, truly. So, my friends, thank you for being with me from day one, a lot of you, from the very first time I found that website. I saw your faces, your before pictures, your stories. I know we didn't go into why you found Carnivore, but if anyone is thinking it's just because we were casually curious what would happen if we only ate meat, that was not the case for any of us. That's not really how carnivores come to be. It's because we all were suffering with either weight, eating disorders, boils, infertility. We had troubles, health problems, diverticulitis. You know, there were reasons that we found this community. And I just appreciate you sticking by me when I was a brand new carnivore who was struggling, and the scale would go up and I would bemoan my life, and y'all were like, please calm down and eat some meat. And here we are all these years later, and I'm just thankful for you. And I hope people can take a look at your lives and see, A, you're not dead yet. B, you're not inhumane, horrible people, if you think that, you know, some people think meat eaters are in general. And you can see that it can be simple. I hope those of you watching can see, if you want to make it complicated and expensive, please go right ahead. Sounds fine, but it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't. So thank you guys for coming on, and I'll see you a lot, as I do always. So, all right, bye.
Bye. Love you guys too. Have a good night.